Garcia, and this is my formative speech. According to the statistics and disease facts of the National Meningitis Association, 600 to 1,000 people get infected with meningitis each year in the U.S., but only 15 to 10% of the patients die. The other percentage either comes out fine or temporarily or permanently disabled. Believe it or not, this disease has killed hundreds of people throughout the years and is still being a threat today. As this is affecting many, I believe that we should all be aware to learn more about the situation. Personally, there was a point in my life where I was affected by this serious illness, but this actually made me want to learn more about this topic. By learning more about meningitis, you have a better idea of what it really is and what it causes. First, I will discuss what is meningitis. Then I will briefly mention 2 out of 3 different types that cause meningitis, and finally the outcome of someone who had been affected by this. Okay, to fully understand meningitis, I will explain what it is, and secondly, I will describe some of the symptoms. So the scientific term of meningitis is meningococcal. Well, according to an article published in 2012 in healthline.com, Renetta Lights and Elizabeth Bosky, graduated with PhDs, said meningitis is an inflammation in the meninges. This is a membrane that covers the brain and the spinal cord. Meningitis may occur when fluid surrounding the meninges becomes infected. So those are the fluids that we have around the brain. I didn't have time to put a picture of the spine, but that's basically when you have meningitis, how it affects your brain, how it slows it up. So this basically is when this bacteria enters your body and comes in contact with the fluids that surround the spine and brain, which swells your membrane of the surrounding tissues. Okay, so now that you know what meningitis is, so what are the symptoms? So one of the most common symptoms of meningitis are headaches and fevers, which is difficult to distinguish from the common flu. But by diagnosing other symptoms such as stiffness around the neck, drowsiness, and having pale skin out of the normal, they start to have a better diagnostics of what might be making someone sick. Anyone can get this disease, and it's very contagious. Personally, when I went to the hospital, they asked me a lot of questions. Well, they had trouble diagnosing this disease because they first took out blood samples from my arm, where they couldn't find anything. So they had to extract fluids from my spine, where they injected I think it's a 3-inch needle into my spine. Which at that time I didn't feel anything, because when you're infected by this, you have like a terrible headache and you can't really eat or do anything. So yeah, I discussed the first type that caused. So first I will discuss the okay. So first I will discuss the second type that causes meningitis. First type that causes meningitis, and if it is dangerous or not. Then I will discuss the second type and explain why is it so dangerous. Okay. So the first type of meningitis is caused by a virus, which is called viral meningitis. This type is the most common, and the one I had, and is the least dangerous for patients. Yet it is highly contagious and passed by either the food we eat, as well as in drinks, and by touching areas that are exposed to germs and contaminated areas. I even asked the doctor in LAUSD Medical Center, how can someone get viral meningitis, and he said that it is very common, such as a common flu, and can be spread even by the surrounding airborne. As described in the article Meningitis, a Bacteria Killer, taken from the New Orleans Magazine Journal by Robson Lutz, the author claims both types of bacteria are common and can live in the throat and respiratory tract, passages without causing any symptoms whatsoever. They spread easily from person to person by coughing, kissing, and sneezing. Unfortunately, only rarely do they overcome the body's natural defense mechanism and cause meningitis. So now we know what the first type of virus causes meningitis. Well, the second type of that causes meningitis is called bacterial meningitis. This type of disease is usually passed on by an infected individual by their saliva or mucus. It is the most dangerous and life-threatening bacteria that seriously causes a person to be very ill. It is the most dangerous type because in serious cases, it can kill a person within hours. About only 10 to 14% of people that get infected by just this bacterial meningitis have died and have a high rate and a risk with after effects. Meningitis and how, now that we know that the two types of meningitis and how each one is different, I will now get into the topic of treatments and the outcome of someone who had the disease. So now I'll explain if there are any treatments for meningitis and what are the outcomes of someone who had meningitis. Okay, so are there any treatments to treat and help fight this disease? According to the webpage of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, it claims there is no specific antibiotic for bacterial meningitis. It depends on the bacteria involved. Viral meningitis isn't treated. It usually resolves on its own. Symptoms should go away within 2 weeks. There are no serious long-term problems associated with viral meningitis. Well, as I was diagnosed with viral meningitis, they didn't have any treatment for me, so they basically gave me just supplement. I think it was called, I forgot what it's called, but it was just nourishment for my body because I couldn't eat. So they just observed me. They had me in an isolation room because I was basically contagious. But after the first day, I was like, they moved me to rooms. Okay, so what affects outcomes of someone who has meningitis? Well, as I talked earlier, it could depend on what type of meningitis it is. If someone was affected by viral meningitis and got better, there is a high chance that they won't have any physical or mental disability. On the contrary, if it's bacterial meningitis, then the percentage of getting better without any disabilities is very low. In the journal article Mind Over Matter by Mary Claire Mason, she states about 15% of people who survive the most serious form of this disease, bacterial meningitis, have significant long-term effects. These include hearing loss, eyesight problems, difficulty problems, behavioral problems, and memory loss. As debilitating as these are, emotional difficulties such as anxiety, depression, mood swings, and loss of confidence. So these are the after effects of someone who might have this disease. Okay, now that I have you have a little bit more info about what meningitis is, it is really important to discuss this topic about meningitis and what it really did. First, I discussed what meningitis was. Then I described the two types that are most common in society. And finally, I related the outcome of someone who was affected by this disease. I know that this is not a pretty picture or comfortable to hear or look at, but it's something that we should all learn and take in consideration and be aware of what goes around and take precaution.